One of the things that made this interesting and easy from a preparation standpoint is that you basically share all your numbers and information publicly on your LinkedIn page. Why do that?
It's a brutal business. It's a lot of hours, a lot of time spent on their feet, loading and unloading bars. Trainers are really serving almost as therapists to their clients. From my standpoint, it's the most rewarding thing we do is seeing trainers who joined us with maybe a single independent client, and now they have a full book, not necessarily in how to write a program or how to keep a client engaged from that way, but how to support a new entrepreneur in standing their business up from the ground up, because I've been through it and I know how isolating and daunting it is.
Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. I am your host, John Franklin. Joined with me, as always, my friend, co-founder, confidant, and captain, Mateo Lopez. Looking good,
I am
buddy.
a captain. I'm not John's captain. Let's just
sometimes.
Who's to say?
I am the captain.
We got an interesting one for you. I think you guys are going to like this. With us live and direct from the West Coast. It's rare we get a West Coast guest around here. We have Joe Cicero of the Yard. What's up, man?
What's going on, guys? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making the time to do it, and thank you for having that mustache. Just starting the show off strong. But
I do what I can.
Best in Major League thrills for the fellas and free mustache rides for the ladies.
We're not here to talk about your grooming. We're here to talk about your fitness business. So tell us a little bit about the Yard. What is it?
Yeah, so the Yard is a relatively new fitness concept. We launched in San Francisco in December of 2021 and added a second location in Mill Valley, which is just on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. In April of 23. So just celebrated our second anniversary there. Model's a bit unique. It's all reservation based. So when you make a reservation, you get your own squat rack for the hour. We call them pods, and then shared access to the rest of the facility. So various free weights, cardio equipment, etc. We really cater to two types of users. One being independent personal trainers who reserve pods for their clients, kind of in the same way that a barber rents a chair from the owner of a barber shop. And that's actually the original inspiration for the model. And then the other half of our business is individual members who, are sick of waiting in line for the squat rack at their commercial gym. So they can be more efficient than ever with their workouts because they know exactly what equipment they're going to have access to every single time.
You mentioned the barber shop. I think the one thing that was noticeable to me right off the bat is just way more trainers than my barbershop. My barbershop has 9 chairs, doesn't have 50 barbers. You have a lot of trainers at the gym. How does that work?
Yeah. So ironically, we have at each location, we have 9 pods and 8 pods in San Francisco and Mill Valley, respectively. But, we don't have any volume minimums, so some of our trainers are with us, for 120 sessions a month. Some of them are with us for, 1 session a week. Some of them are full-time, full-fledged trainers. That's kind of their thing. And others, it's a side gig. Our average frequency falls right in the middle there, around 30 sessions a month. We're starting to hit a little bit of a ceiling in terms of capacity in San Francisco and thinking through ways to add so we can continue to accommodate demand, but still have a little bit of a ways to go in Mill Valley, just given the relative nascency there.
Yeah, I imagine this would be very popular in San Francisco, just because the rents would be so expensive and starting a gym probably comes with a decent amount of red tape. Do you have like a similar amount of personal trainers per location, or do you tend to see more in the urban location?
Yeah, we have a bit more in SF. I think that's a function of being in market longer, but also, it's a dense urban area. So whereas Mill Valley is suburban, right? So there's just fewer trainers out there. We do see the frequency of sessions in Mill Valley on a per trainer basis being quite a bit higher. The reason being those, we're kind of their home base. Whereas in San Francisco, some folks, again, are either doing this just on the side or splitting between us and another gym, Or another thing we see a lot of is trainers doing a lot of online coaching. So don't necessarily need a space for that.
Yeah, because Mill Valley is like a kind of like a hot mom suburb, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That's like a average home around there is like $3 million, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's a higher end market that makes it really attractive from a personal training standpoint. In terms of client leads, we can continue to feed clients to our trainers to keep them busy with kind of older, more affluent folks. Where those folks definitely exist in San Francisco. We're in the Pacific Heights neighborhood, which is also pretty affluent. But we also do get on the member side mid-20s to mid-30s, technology employees. Open to trying new things, have a bit more disposable income, are tight on time. So we're really looking for that efficiency. So when we expanded to Mill Valley, I thought, use the San Francisco blueprint and, we're good to go. But the things that worked in San Francisco didn't necessarily translate over to Mill Valley. So that was a good learning experience for sure.
Just so people understand, what is the breakdown of like trainer-based revenue versus just people who want to come into a pod and work out?
It's about 50-50. Our unlimited membership is $265 a month on the member side. On average, they're coming 3 to 4 times a week. And then our trainers buy packs of credits. So they can drop in and pay as you go for $39.99 on the hour. They can buy a 20 pack of credits for $620. Or they could buy a 40 pack for $11.20, which shakes out to be about $28 an hour. Most folks will just buy the largest package because it rolls over month to month, and they have some economies of scale there. They're typically charging their clients $130 to $150 an hour, so they're taking home well over $100 an hour. Which our goal was to basically take Equinox's personal training compensation and invert it, right? So the take-home rate of the gym at Equinox is what our trainers are each taking home. So, it's a brutal business. It's a lot of hours, a lot of time spent on their feet, loading and unloading bars. Trainers are really serving almost as therapists to their clients. We overhear the conversations all the time. It's a tough gig. If you're walking away with 30 or $40 an hour, it's even tougher. So, our guys can work a third of the time and make the same amount of money, which is great and really, is in line with our whole mission to empower these guys.
And I think I read it on your LinkedIn post or somewhere. So someone working out at the gym, are they paying you or they're paying the coach and the coach is paying you?
Personal training client is as long as they're only personal training, they're just paying that trainer. So our only relationship with them is they sign a waiver, and then they belong to that trainer. If they do want to use the gym in addition to those sessions, we give them a discount on membership. But I always thought it was backwards that, again, and I don't mean to dump on Equinox. I was a member there for years when I lived in Boston. It was a great experience, but it always blew my mind that people were paying north of $300 a month for a membership, and then a personal trainer fee on top of that if they weren't using any of the other amenities outside of that. So unless they're using the space in addition to those personal training sessions, there is no fee.
So when you say the word pod, so you said one location has 8 pods, the other location has 9 pods. What do you mean when you refer to like a pod? Because I got a video of your gym here. Is it like a physical room? Because it looks like a pretty open concept gym from the photos and videos here.
We're going for, I was a college football player. We're going for football fieldhouse vibes where it's a row of racks. So each of these racks is a pod. So where you see that woman deadlifting there, that's pod 2. Directly across from her, where the trainer is standing, that is our first pod. And then above her, the woman deadlifting, that's our 8th pod. And then 7 down through 3 run along the left side of the screen there. So
it gets you a rack, it gets you barbell, bench, free weights, and then they can it looks like you got racks of other stuff in different locations that people can
So share from. So in San Francisco, we have adjustable dumbbells at each pod, which from a convenience standpoint are great. But, if you guys have used those things, they are, can be kind of janky, especially in a commercial setting. So you're kind of limited in what you can do with them, outside of a simple press or row. You really can't do much more than that. So if you guys know any good, really functional adjustable dumbbells, please send them my way. But other than that, we have several dumbbell racks that people can grab dumbbells or kettlebells and bring them to their pods. That stuff's all shared, as is all of our cardio equipment. So air bikes, rowers, ski ergs. And then both locations have turf areas as well, where you can drag a sled, flip a tire, do battle ropes, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, because I'm seeing some like group classes going on, and I know that you have that on your site. I'm not on the homepage here, so explain how that works.
Yep. So our flagship class is called Barbell Basics, and the idea is it's an introduction to the key powerlifting movements. Not only that, but just how to navigate a rack, right? Like a lot of people will walk up to a squat rack and have no idea where to start, how to adjust the hooks, how to load the bar, all that stuff. So it's very much a beginner to intermediate level training solution for folks. And our entry into the gym for many people is this: we do 6-week programs. So every 6 weeks is a new cycle. If folks sign up for it, they're committing to 6 weeks of unlimited access to both gyms, and we're also adding in a personal training consultation and 2 DEXA scans. So we've partnered with Body Spec, which is a mobile DEXA scanning unit, and they'll park at the gym, and you can get body composition, bone density, visceral fat content, and see how that trends over the course of the program. So that's been an excellent membership feeder, a great way for people to try out the gym. And we've seen north of 80% conversion to full-time membership from folks who participate in that program. And it builds, a nice sense of community and camaraderie among folks too, which is kind of the North Star for everyone.
So you mentioned community. How are you kind of balancing that? Because I think I saw in a tagline, you're kind of trying to do both. Like if you don't want to talk to anyone, you can go to a pod and it's fine. But if you do want a community, there's also some classes. So how are you I guess, talking about both of those ideas in your marketing when you're trying to attract new clients?
Yeah, it's tricky with our model, right? Because if we're not careful, it can become very transactional. I like to say the community is there if you want it. If not, there's no issue with you kind of doing your own thing and keeping to yourself. Like for me, historically, my gym time was my time. Maybe I would chop it up after a session, but the gym for me was my escape and my time to plug my headphones in and kind of go to work. And we encourage that. But we are finding that people are naturally kind of gravitating towards each other. And community is one of those things that you can't really force, right? It grows organically. All we can really do is treat people well, treat people fairly, build a team of good and reasonable people. And I think the rest kind of comes naturally from there.
Sorry, we may have covered this, but the class schedule, it's just 2 a day, right? You're just doing 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon at each location. And then the rest of the time is pod reservation.
Yeah, exactly. So our barbell class, we kind of bookend each day. We do have a couple of independent trainers who are reserving space at the gym to host their own classes independently, which is kind of a whole different thing. But for our flagship class, that's the model.
And they need a membership, or can they buy class a la carte? How does that work?
Yeah, most folks are on a membership, but you can purchase it a la carte. It's also accessible via ClassPass and WellHub.
Got it. So I may want to go pod and then one day, and then the next day I come class, and I can just kind of pop back and forth is what you're saying.
Yeah. And many folks will do the 6-week program, convert to a membership, and maybe kind of graduate from class and work out on their own, which is great too.
Well, it sounds like, you have the basics, but you also offer, it looks like a high rocks type class and then another class style on top of that, correct?
Yeah. And both of those are independently hosted. So
you're actually like helping promote independent trainer.
Yep. So that's essentially what we're doing with all of our independent trainers for the one-on-one stuff. But those guys stood up their own classes at the gym where they're just renting the space by the hour and collecting directly from their clients.
And so how does that work? Do I have to rent like all 8 pods?
In San Francisco, we have the turf room is set aside, so that's easily reservable for class. So that works out pretty smoothly. And then in Mill Valley, what we'll do is we'll just block off 2 to 3 pods, over the course of that 45 minutes or an hour, so no one else can book them.
Got it. So it's like a segment of the gym.
Yep, exactly.
And what does it cost if you want to run like a group class?
Usually it's $100 an hour to rent out that turf room, or to set aside 3 pods.
So it's pretty sweet. And that means like they could have someone could have 2 peak hours, and that's what, $200 a day. So 5 days a week, $4,000 risk free. You got your own group gym in San Francisco. That sounds pretty good. And can they
That's
blast
kind of
music
the
and do
idea,
whatever
right?
they
Is
want?
you mentioned it earlier, the red tape, the upfront capital, the risk, the downside of opening your own studio is significant, especially in an expensive market like San Francisco. So this is kind of a low risk way to test it out. If they want to stay with us forever, we love that. But if they want to graduate to open their own studios, which we've had trainers do that as well, we want to continue supporting them. I think having that sort of abundance mindset in fitness is really important. I think there's more than enough to go around for everyone. Yeah, like I said, I view those as really, good outcomes when a trainer leaves to open their own studio.
So how does it work with setting the vibe? Can these guys pick their own music if they're renting out the space? How does it work individually? Or do you control the music and what volume it's at? Because I know that's very important to a lot of independent trainers.
Yeah, we so at each studio we're staffed around the clock currently. So whoever's working the front desk usually controls the music, with definitely a lot of input from our trainers. Yeah, and it's one of those things of course everyone wants to be amped up and listen to upbeat motivational music, but we also have to be able to facilitate conversations, right? So it's definitely not Club Barry's boot camp, right, where the lights are dimmed and the music is blasting. But when we have a packed house, it's a vibe. Yeah, the energy is really, really high, and it kind of feels like a party a little bit.
Tail likes to party.
Yes.
Hey, gym owners, are you looking for a way to generate more leads, close more sales, and increase client retention? Introducing Kilo. We are a software company that gives gym owners the tools they need to increase revenue and run a successful gym. With Kilo, you get a beautifully designed website to capture more leads, an integrated marketing automation platform to increase sales, and our gym management software so you can add new client memberships, process payments, and organize your class schedule. If you're ready to upgrade your gym management software, book a call at usekilo.com.
One of the things that made this interesting and easy from a preparation standpoint is that you basically share all your numbers and information publicly on your LinkedIn page. Why do that?
Yeah, so it's a bootstrap business. I don't have any at this point any investors or advisors. So to me, sharing that data publicly creates a certain level of accountability. Is a great way to engage with folks, I think. I can't begin to tell you how many people will pull me aside and tell me how much they enjoyed reading it. And it's kind of a dense and quantitative read, right? So I'm always surprised by the people that pull me aside and tell me how much they enjoy it. So yeah, it's an accountability thing. It's a great way for me to keep my finger on the pulse of key metrics, right? Because as you guys know, when you're in business for yourself, the list of things that you need to do is endlessly long. And it's really easy to just focus on the inevitable fire drills that come up every day. Whereas some of this stuff, the business would keep running if I didn't publish these reports. But I also know the business inside and out from a data perspective, and am able to identify signals and trends and hopefully act on them sooner than I otherwise would be able to. I think the other beauty of this is, if and when we go down the path of bringing on external capital, we have folks who are already engaged who have a good grasp on what the business is and how we're performing. And, my hope is that, when that time comes, that instead of having to put together some, 20-page pitch deck, I can just point them to the newsletter and have them, all their questions answered.
And I feel like, this is robust. This is far beyond what you would expect from a brick and mortar fitness facility. Maybe we can talk a bit about what you did before this, so people seeing this are not freaking out because their reports don't look like this.
So my background's in finance and consulting. So I started my career in Boston, was at a strategy consulting firm for 6 years. We would do a lot of due diligence for private equity companies. So, when they were looking at making an acquisition, we would look at the target company in the industry they competed in, and basically make a recommendation as to whether or not they should go forward. And then once the company was in the private equity portfolio, we'd make recommendations around, how to grow it. And then I ultimately moved out to the Bay in 2018 to join a venture capital fund where we were kind of on the other side of that equation, making investments. Part of that report is like, that's kind of the only way I know how to operate. That's what I've always done since the day I graduated college. So a lot of it was more habitual than anything else.
Those skills obviously transferred over to this beautiful LinkedIn post. Were there other skills from that world that helped you, or were you kind of flying blind once you actually started to buy the barbells and hire the trainers like the rest of us?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of learning on the fly and, faking it until I haven't made it yet, but I'm certainly still faking it. But yeah, I think organization skills, project management, all those things make this whole endeavor, at least a little bit easier or maybe manageable. But in terms of the intricacies of the industry itself, those were very much kind of learned on the fly.
So one of the things that you credit to your success is Google reviews, and something we talk about very often on the show. And as makers of websites and custodians of Jim's internet presence, looks like you got almost 3,000 Google reviews across both locations last year. That's
that's inclusive of everything. So that's inclusive of ClassPass reviews, MindBody, Google, Yelp. To your point, Google is far and away our highest priority. Nearly all of our website traffic.
Oh, okay. So 3,812. So about 5,000 of them are ClassPass reviews.
Yep.
So 5,000. You've had 5,000 ClassPass people come through the gyms, or more than that, because do you have to leave a review? I don't know. It's been a while since we used ClassPass.
Yeah, I think to make a second reservation, you do need to leave a review. Yeah, so ClassPass volume has been high for sure. And, if I were to do it all over again, would we, a third location, are we going to offer pods through ClassPass? I don't know, because the whole, the pitch from ClassPass is hey, this is a membership feeder. That's not really the case, right? People who are using ClassPass, are using it, A, because they have some price sensitivity, and B, because they're lifting at the yard and doing yoga at the studio across the street, right? But there have been, some conversions, and I think, it gives us really good visibility. It gives us an opportunity in the early days not to have an empty gym. So from a content production standpoint, that helps. There is value there, but I just don't necessarily think it's what, ClassPass kind of purports it to be.
So speaking of membership feeders, right? How are you attracting people to the gym? Are you attracting people for your trainers? Are you attracting them just for the pods? How do you divvy that stuff up? And then, when someone does inquire, how are you handing them off to someone else?
We're working on both fronts to drive membership and clients with no real priority one versus the other. Keeping our trainers busy with high quality client leads is really important to us. But the beauty of membership, and this applies to clients too, right, is theoretically every single human being within a travel distance of the yard is addressable. Google reviews are, far and away, our number one channel for sourcing new folks. I always say, if we were to drop everything and focus on one thing, it'd be that, because all of our website traffic comes from search. Interestingly, we're seeing a big uptick in folks using ChatGPT over Google, which is interesting. I don't necessarily understand how one feeds into the other, but I don't think driving Google reviews would hurt that.
Remember, folks,
beyond that,
in San Francisco, he's ahead. He's in the future. So
beyond that, it's kind of throwing a million different things at the wall and hoping, it sticks, right? So we do a bi-weekly newsletter. We're active on Instagram. Word of mouth, referrals, all that good stuff is really valuable. But I can't point to a single method or channel that's beyond the Google reviews. That's that really moved the needle for us. I think it's more continuing to fight the good fight. being really, really, conservative and smart with capital allocation. You choose a good location, you get a good deal on it, and you survive for as long as humanly possible until you're profitable. And that's kind of our mindset around it. We're doing a little bit of paid search, a little bit of paid social, which helps with visibility, but conversion on that is a little bit of a black box right now, so I'm kind of on the fence in terms of what the long-term future is there.
So let's say I see all your Google reviews. I'm interested, gym near me. I call you up. What happens? Am I getting some kind of offer? Are you sending me to a personal trainer? Do I come into the gym for a tour? What happens once I call you up?
You're either talking to me or one of my colleagues when you call or text us. That's another really interesting learning is, I was super averse to texting folks at first because it felt really intrusive, but it seems that actually is people's preferred method over anything else. So we've really leaned into texting. So depending on kind of what you're looking for, that kind of dictates what the next steps are. We're always willing and ready to give tours for prospective members and clients. If it is a prospective client, we've tried to actually remove ourselves from the equation as much as possible. So on our trainer page, you can kind of filter based on location, the gender of the trainer, their specialties, their availability, and reach out to them directly. What we sacrificed in visibility into conversion on that standpoint, we've added back in terms of efficiency, right? My whole thing is like when someone reaches out to us, in many cases, it's usually motivated by something in their lives, right? Whether they need to get married or, they just had a baby, they're looking to lose their baby weight. There's all these events. And I think responding immediately and removing steps from the equation, because it is an emotional decision sometimes, I think simplifying that as much as possible is really important. So with the trainer client matchmaking process, we've tried to disintermediate as much as possible to make it more simple. The last thing I'll say we're doing, which is a recent initiative, which we've seen some early success with, is we're calling them guided training sessions. So, if you're new to the gym, new to the barbell, don't know how to navigate a rack, you can book a 30-minute complimentary session with us. And one of our guys at the front desk will guide you through not only how to set up for the big lifts, but how to do them. And then from there, if they want to join as a member or for class or to be matched with a personal trainer, we're really kind of loading up the top of the funnel that way.
Yeah, that was part of, like, someone comes in, what if they say, I want personal training? Are you pairing them? Do you have someone on staff who will work with them? Like, how would you handle I want to be personally trained request?
Yeah, so 99% of the time, those requests are coming in through our site. That's largely handled by them independently.
It sounds like once they get there, they're picking. They're looking at the list and they're picking.
Exactly. Now, there are folks who look at the list of trainers and don't want to deal with it, and rather we kind of handhold them through the process, which we're happy to do. And that just becomes kind of a back and forth of like, okay, what are your goals? What's your availability? What's your budget? Kind of going through that questionnaire and then offering them 2 to 3 options to choose from. But like in terms of people walking into the gym and inquiring, that rarely happens. Our guys at the front desk are equipped to handle those situations, but it really doesn't happen much.
And so then I guess how much of your job is boosting and promoting the trainers, right? On your social or the site has their bios, right? But on social, like how much of your job is just to highlight how good your group of trainers are?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. From my standpoint, it's the most rewarding thing we do is seeing trainers who joined us with maybe a single independent client, and now they have a full book. That's probably where I can offer the most support. Again, not necessarily in how to write a program or how to keep a client engaged in that way, but how to support a new entrepreneur in standing their business up from the ground up, because I've been through it and I know how isolating and daunting it is. So having kind of a partner who can help with that. And, a lot of the requests we're getting from the business side on the trainer, from trainers is not all that complicated, right? The actual business itself, it's hard, but it's simple. So a lot of the business related questions we're getting is simple blocking and tackling where I can pretty confidently give a black and white answer, like, don't do this, do this. And I think that sort of decisiveness is really valuable when you're dealing with the ambiguity of a new business.
And so you talked about being a bootstrap business. You're just kind of staying lean and grinding through things. Your report mentioned that revenues are up pretty substantially, right, year over year. Talk to me about the unit economics. Like, what does a fully functioning facility look like in terms of revenue, and then also what does it look like in terms of profit?
Yeah, so our North Star is, we use a metric called utilization, right? So our goal is to get every pod used 5 times a day on weekdays and twice a day on weekends. Totally kind of an arbitrary number, but the thought is, twice a day in the mornings, once in the middle of the day, and twice a day at night feels reasonable and attainable. If you look at the latest report, SF is well north of that. I think we're, in the 150% range, and Mill Valley is approaching 100%. So, at some point there's probably a recalibration there of like what our North Star is, but utilization is kind of the metric that I'm preaching across the board of continuing to drive. 150% utilization implies, again, it all depends on the breakdown of membership versus trainers, but implies between 50 and 60,000 a month in revenue, and our operating margins are at that level around 40%.
But you did mention that it's been compressing as you go through this growth phase. Well, why is that?
The operating margin?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so, we actually weren't staffed around the clock up until recently. I'm still not convinced of this, but I do think there may be an opportunity to have hybrid staffing because, you guys know the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. hour at any gym is, maybe a handful of personal training sessions going, but, generally it's pretty quiet. And all of our trainers who are using the space during that time, they kind of get the lay of the land. Their etiquette's great. They have, shared ownership in a way and accountability. So we haven't committed to this, but I've thought that there's an opportunity to scale back staffing during those hours because outside of rent, that's the largest expense, by far. But as we've grown, our thought has been like, let's be staffed around the clock just to accommodate growth. And then when we start to plateau, like we can think through, okay, is there an efficiency add here? But my mindset with a lot of this stuff is like, I don't want to break anything. So like, let's kind of stay the course until we start to see things taper a little bit.
What is the reason for investing in staff? There's obvious ones that we can think of, but
the experience is better, right? Like, if someone, in the rare instance, someone walks into the gym to see what's going on, it's not a good experience for them to show up and no one to be there. There's inevitably equipment that needs to be fixed or bathrooms that need to be cleaned or trash that needs to be taken out. Scheduled maintenance is one thing, but there's always unexpected situations that, again, from a high-end experience standpoint, like having someone there to address it immediately is really valuable. So that's the primary reason.
And are you building these people, the trainers, up most of the time, or are you trying to also attract, people with large existing books? Maybe they have a higher profile on social media. How do you look at the trainers you put on your team, on your squad?
Yeah, we aren't doing much proactive trainer outreach anymore. We're still open to adding new folks to the team, but for the time being, our focus has been, engaging, retaining, and delighting our existing trainers with, business support and new clients.
I guess with the third location, how will you do it, with the next one?
Well, so when we first started, I spent countless hours, basically DMing trainers on Instagram, and it was really, really effective. Like every other month we'd add a high volume trainer, and I think that's the primary reason why San Francisco ramped as quickly as it did. But our Insta has actually been blacklisted since, so like I can't do anything that resembles that anymore. So we've been deactivated 3 or 4 times now, and like it is in acts of desperation, like reaching out to everyone we know who knows someone at Instagram to get us reactivated.
Maybe you need to just the Yard recruiting account, and that's the one you send DMs from.
Well, so the thing is, like, we thought that, so I started DMing folks from my personal, and then, Instagram must have tied
Put
the two together. Yeah. So
They're good at that.
Yeah. So DMs, I think, is out of the picture for now.
Yeah, because that seems like shooting fish in a barrel because the offer is so compelling, right? It's like,
yeah, it's and everyone's qualified. You can qualify them by just looking at their profiles. If we could figure out a way around that, like, yeah, I would put many of our eggs into that basket. But the risk right now is too great to. I mean, it's a tricky thing, and one I've tried to work around many times now, but I can't risk losing our instinct again. So unlikely to happen. But SF is a big market for independent trainers for sure. I think at last count, there's around 5,000, not necessarily independent, but 5,000 trainers in the Bay. But it is relatively tight knit. Everyone seems to know everyone. So, I think the best thing we can do to attract new talent is to just keep our existing squad happy.
And you said, a lot of the efforts into retaining and making the existing squad happy. Can you tell people more about the mini MBA you have for these people that you have on your team?
Yeah, so we call it the Trainer Launchpad, and it's kind of what I was talking about earlier, just business support and resources for aspiring or newly independent trainers. So, we've had folks that start with us on day one. They don't have a business incorporated. They don't have a business plan. They haven't put together packages, pricing, any of that stuff. And we've helped them to launch their businesses and kind of graduate and run their own thing from our studio. So yeah, like I said, that's probably the most rewarding part of my job because I think the struggles they're going through, I can appreciate being an entrepreneur myself.
So what's the future hold?
So actively pursuing a third location. We'd like to build some density in the Bay Area. 3 to 5 locations kind of feels right. And then from there, start to think about expansion and scaling, whether that's owned studios in other big markets. I'm from the East Coast, so New York City feels like the next kind of logical step for me, just given demographics, density. I've been to gyms in New York, and it's mayhem. And I think the Yard could solve that. And then franchising or licensing our business model is something that I think is a unique opportunity, specifically as it relates to independent trainers. Because when they do get busy, right, they kind of hit a ceiling with their business, whether it's at our studio or elsewhere. They can only see so many clients one-on-one in a day. So the next logical expansion is either online coaching or open their own studios. And I think for the latter, being a resource to them as a licensing arrangement or franchising arrangement, whatever it is, but continuing that relationship in a slightly different way is kind of how I see us expanding beyond, a small footprint of owned stores.
I guess right before we wrap up, you mentioned how to scale. I noticed you have Marcus Filly stuff on there for virtual. What made you decide to do that versus just kind of building something in-house with your stable of trainers or with yourself?
Yeah. So Marcus is actually local. I know people know him nationally, but he's based up in Marin County, not far from our Mill Valley studio. He actually got his start at that gym, under previous ownership, but at our Mill Valley location. So we've built a good relationship with him, and his name carries a lot of weight, again, nationally and locally. So there's a unique opportunity there. But generally, my thought has always been like, there's a lot of people and many people who show up to our gym on the membership side. They have a program, they have a plan, they're just there to execute it. But I think there's many people out there who don't. So by providing that to them, asynchronously through a partner like Marcus, or, we've also discussed doing it with other of our trainers, and we've tested that in a few different ways. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there that we haven't quite fully capitalized on yet.
So where are people going when they're ready to follow along in the journey? Where are we sending them? We'll link to your annual reports down below so people can go check that out, because I think that's a cool thing to do. But where do people find you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so our Instagram handle is goyard.fit, same as our website. And then personally, my Instagram is JM Cicero. So you can find us on either of those.
And Teo, where are people going to find us?
They're going to usekilo.com, where you can find tons of resources on how to also become a better gym owner, business owner, trainer. And also, if you need help with your SEO, if you need help with your Google Business Profile, your reviews, your website, give us a call. We can help you with your website. If you need help texting your leads, just like Joe's a big fan of texting your leads. So are we. You can get our Gym Lead Machine product, help you text your leads when they opt in. And then finally, if you want to sell them on an awesome membership, or if you want to run payroll for your trainers that you have working at the gym, get yourself our gym management software. It can help you do all those things and much more. So book a call today. Usekilo.com.
And gym owners, it's not always easy finding people like this to come share all their information, give you their secrets, tell you what's going on the front line of fitness. So if you got some value out of this, subscribe, but just buy Kilo. Like if you just buy Kilo, we don't care about the subscribers.
Yeah.
So
we can actually stop doing this show if you just buy Kilo.
Yeah, we can end it. We can go out on top if you just buy Kilo. So until next week, we love you, Gym World.
Bye-bye.